Welcome to Product AMA, your daily online Ask Me Anything. We started Product AMA to give those passionate or curious about product management a daily break, something to look forward to. The format is 1 hour in length, weekdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. The first 30 minutes will always be a guest and a featured topic. The last 30 minutes is devoted to you, the audience, to ask your questions. Today's topic is about personalizing content experience. And we have Simba Khadder, co-founder of Triton, here today online with us from San Francisco to help us look into the topic. Simba, welcome to Product AMA.
Thanks. Great to be here, Mark.
No, it's great. That's great. So Simba, let's get right into the questions and start to create some amazing content for us to learn more about your business and the space that Triton is in. So we all know that personalization is a promise that every brand in varying ways is trying to make to their customers or their audience. And we know that some are doing a better jobs than others. Certainly many of us, I'll say at least here in North America, have experienced that with Netflix or Amazon. And thinking about personalization, I want to understand what it means to you because it's your business. So tell us about how realistic it is for companies that maybe aren't the size of an Amazon or a Netflix, or maybe some big companies that quite aren't as large as those two companies. How realistic is it for them to be able to bring a personalized experience for their audience?
Yeah. I'll talk about what personalization is to me, like how I think about it, and then I'll go into like how to make that applicable to a smaller business than Netflix. So generally, first of all, personalization is kind of like table stakes nowadays. Like users expect things to be personalized to them because the majority of products they use are already personalized. Most people spend a lot of time on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Netflix, etc. You name it, and all of those are inherently personalized very deeply through the user experience. Now, when you think of personalization, there's three parts and three perspectives that you have to think of it from. One piece is understanding the intent of the user. So that's kind of the first piece, is how do I bring value to the user? Well, you kind of want to figure out what is the user trying to do. If the user is coming and they're watching sports content on Netflix, then that tells you a lot about that user. Their intent may be to watch more sports content, or at least that's all you can deduce from what the data you have. On another piece, there is the serendipity part, which is how do you make it such that the user doesn't kind of end up in a hole? Like I watched a sports video, now I'm showing sports videos, and you keep going deeper and deeper and you can't really get out. There's no serendipity. And finally, there's the business value, which is, everyone talks about personalization in terms of like specific features, like, oh, I have this part of my site is personalized, this part of my site is personalized. If you look at YouTube or Netflix, there is really, you can't tell what is or is not personalized because the whole thing from the ground up feels very personal. Like it's to the point where Netflix will decide which image to show you on each movie based on what they think you're more likely to click on. The other thing about the business value is when people think of how do I measure personalization, they again measure in terms of clicks. Where in reality, that's likely not what your business value is. Your business value might be stickiness. Will these users come back? How often do they come back? What's the bounce rate? If it's an image, then it might just be click rate because you're just trying to get people clicks. Different parts of the product will inherently have different value you want to create for a user, and different value you want to create for your business, and it will have a very different form of personalization. Now, going to the question of, all right, I'm not Netflix, what do I do today? Most SaaS products already have some form of personalization. For example, if you use MailChimp for email, they have features around personalization. There's a variety of providers, like even if you use something like Optimize, they do an A/B test. You can maybe decide to let it kind of decide which landing page to show. Obviously, us ourselves at Triton, we do personalization as a service, and we'll do it for content recommendation amongst other things. There's different verticals that companies are focused on. A lot of it's around MarTech, especially, where if you use a specific product, they will try to personalize. And as a small business, you should leverage those as much as possible because they almost always result in a better value than if you try to do it yourself. At the same time, you have to also think about how everything comes together. The problem with having a lot of different SaaS products that have their own personalization is that you will end up with very different experiences on different platforms. And by not being able to conjoin all the data and all your learnings, you'll never be able to do as well as having everything together and having one coherent personalization solution. So the kind of takeaway from that is, if you're at the smallest level, leverage your SaaS tools as much as you can. As you start to move up in your ability to become to do more, you can start to use other products that give you a more general form of personalization, to be able to apply it more generally across your site, across your user experience, and build an experience that's personalized from the ground up, rather than having a lot of personalized pieces tacked on. And then finally, once you get to the size of some of these huge companies, it starts to make sense to either build on top of a personalized solution, or even build your own, such that you can have complete control over the business value you want to create for your end user. So, for example, if you release if you're Netflix, you're always going to lean towards the content you've created, because that has business value to you. It's rare that a personalization solution will be able to give you the exact amount of specificity you want. If you're smaller, that's fine. If you're Netflix size, it actually makes sense to go all the way and be able to really tailor your models to the business value you want to create.
Listen, there's a lot that you shared with us there, so thanks for that. A few that I'll touch on which struck a chord. I mean, the concept of building from the ground up. I think you were referencing Netflix in particular, of how they store data and use data and profile you. That absolutely heard about the concept of the image that you see for a particular show on Netflix is different perhaps than the image I see, based on how I'm segmented by Netflix. That's amazing. Another word that you used, and I use this word a lot as well, this serendipity. Serendipity is this amazing word that, as marketers, as product people, very difficult to plan for serendipity. You hope you find it. It's almost like catching lightning in a bottle. And then MarTech, and I'm glad you brought up the term MarTech, and I think I want to go into that a little bit now. And so there's a lot of MarTech out there. I know in your space, which I've spent some time reviewing the solutions, some of that with your help, thank you, reviewing the solutions in and around MarTech for personalization. As we think about those products or software as a service, I mean, those offerings, they range dramatically. So from personalizing an experience, like let's say experience that I'm familiar with, which could be for known or unknown users, to using cookies like first-party data to collect information as well about that user. There's a lot of pieces here that are very reliant on product people, engineers, architects to figure out how to solution personalization at scale. So I'd like to get your perspective from the clients that you have, maybe some of the people that you've spoken to and hopefully will be clients for Triton one day. What are the challenges that you've seen both within Triton and potentially maybe some competitors or replacements to Triton or services that came before Triton? Some of the challenges you've seen in implementing something like this, if your product wasn't built like Netflix from the ground up. And then maybe on the end of that part, really talk about what the ideal customer might look like for Triton, or where you're looking to take Triton.
Yeah. So in terms of the kind of understanding how the MarTech space looks for personalization and how they all kind of come together. Most SaaS products are very verticalized. If you're MailChimp, you're pretty focused on the email part. If you are a sales-focused software, you're going to completely change how your personalization works. So most of the companies, again, are very compartmentalized in what they do. That's, again, totally fine if you're getting started. When you're first getting started of adding personalization to your product, you likely are going to want to start with bolting on pieces to see how it works, and you will just get inherent value. Like, for example, if you have a recommended for you section, if you make that better, you will get more clicks. It's just how it works. And those are the easiest ways to start. Once you move forward, for example, for your homepage, it may not make sense to actually make the whole entire thing AI generated, because you have editors potentially, depending on what kind of company you are. You have different business values. Personalization itself is it's impossible to measure serendipity. And sometimes an editorial person, a human in the loop, is going to be able to figure out, hey, this is the sort of content we want to be putting out right now because we want to push our business to this direction. If you're a news company, then you might have something that's inherently very important that has to be front page because it's information that you need to get out there, even if it won't be maybe the most popular article ever. It needs to get out there. Once you get to that point, that's usually where Triton becomes really valuable, because rather than being a very verticalized solution like a CMS where we just have personalization added on or bolted on, we give you an API. So it's a lower level product. And you can kind of plug it in and write code on top of it to be able to provide the solution that you need. And we push for people to kind of have human in the loop AI. So the AI kind of takes over by default. In certain places, it can do everything. Like if it's a recommended for you section, likely you can just give it all to the AI and it will do a great job. If it's your homepage, you're going to want to kind of conjoin the two together. So you can maintain your brand, maintain your voice, keep serendipity in, while also being able to optimize to the specific user you're looking at. We'll go as far as to even give you segments. We'll take your whole user base and break them up so that you can see, hey, you know, this 10% of your user base acts similarly or focus on this sort of content. And you can actually personalize to that level. So still human choosing, but they're choosing on a section of your user base that was generated by our AI. And then finally, on the last level, we've actually have some companies that have gone to the point where they have very, very specific machine learning personalization needs that are hyper custom to their product. In that case, they're kind of in a position where they finally have to build something themselves. At that point, we've actually learned that we've created a lot of infrastructure ourselves. We call it Stream SQL. But we've since moved on and actually released as a product at streamsql.io, where you can go and actually use all the data infrastructure we use in the backend that takes all of your data, allows you to generate all the inputs you need for a machine learning model, and let you work on that level too. So for an average, or for a company that maybe isn't Netflix, you need to kind of balance what you give to a vendor, what you can allow a SaaS product to take full advantage of, what you want an API to do, because an API that exists that can give you, for example, if a related for you content. And then finally, if you have something hyper specific for your use case, for example, if you have an e-com side that you want to add on and plug in, you either find a very verticalized solution that exists for that, or you may be in a position where you have to build your own on show the machine learning. At that point, you should again try to figure out what parts are hyper specific to you, which is likely going to be the model of machine learning in this case, and use as much other products, data engineering, all the other stuff from other places, such that you build as little as possible while providing the most value you can to your end user.
You and I met maybe a year or so ago, and that was when I was working in a different business, and we were looking to test the early value proposition of what you were doing around personalization. That business in particular was more of a media impression-driven business, and you were very helpful with us to figure out how to calculate some form of an ROI. I think it was incremental page depth or time on site, some measurements that we could use to attach to a CPM or an eCPM to figure out the incremental value of having Triton be part of the media solution. So from when we kind of first met and you did your initial sell job on us, and I know it was very methodical in terms of proof of concept, longer term contract, that sort of a trajectory. So thinking about today, you have certainly, sounds like, much more to offer than just what we initially started with back that year plus ago. But how has that value proposition played out for you when you're selling? So if you put on you're the co-founder, although you're obviously heavily involved in the product side, which is why we're on the phone with you today. I'm sure you also have some role as part of sales. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you go about selling a product with the power and complexity of Triton.
Yeah, it's important to start at the solution. Or at the problem, and then go in very solution focused. Every company is different. Every company has different goals they are trying to achieve through their personalization or just through their product in general. And my job is to one, have the features in the product there to be able to provide value and solve problems for the end user. But the other piece is just understanding what is relevant to this customer. For example, if you're impression based and you really just want more clicks, that's a very, very different value prop than if you're a subscription business. Because if you're a subscription business, you already understand that clicks are probably not that correlated to users likely to subscribe, or there's other metrics that you need to also that are also correlated to it. So part of it is breaking down, how does your business work? How can personalization come in and help you meet your business case? So I really just try to come in, understand the problem, break down how this works, and help them think about kind of ways to bring personalization in, but to actually get them to the end goal that they desire.
Any examples maybe you could think of top of mind without referencing the client specifically of what that sales process kind of looks like for you?
I'll talk about two. One is impression-based, the other one's subscription, just to kind of give you two different cases. With an impression-based one, the goal usually is to find places on the website that are very under-optimized. In the case of one client, it was a recommended for you section. It was a place where it's not, it can provide incremental value, but it's not as drastic as changing your homepage to be AI focused. So it's kind of an easy piece to start out with. For that client in particular, we just did a very simple A/B test. On average, we end up doing around 50% better than their baseline that they had, which is what they had prior to us. And it was doing better in pretty much every single day it ran, it did better. And there were some days where it would like 4x what the other one did. So that in that case, it was a very it was a simpler way to find parts of the website that you can provide value to, plug in, and just show kind of the power of the machine learning there and personalization, and what value that created for the user base over time in an A/B test. The subscription case tends to be much more complex. In the subscription case, part of it, and this is part of our product, is to help the company understand why their users subscribe. That's actually how we start with subscription companies, because unlike kind of impression-based ones, with subscription ones, even if you focus in on one piece and it gets a ton more clicks, it might have zero effect on subscriptions, which is zero effect on revenue. So we're paying you for vanity metrics. So we start by first collecting data through the user journey, help them understand how all these different effects come together to create the end goal of a subscription. And then after they subscribe, we can do the same thing for churn. But for this example, I'll just focus on the subscription piece. So we might find that, hey, this week before they subscribe, they tend to start clicking on this sort of content much more often. Once we can start to break that down and show them, usually via personas, we'll take their whole user base, break them down to like 15 or so pieces, and we'll show how each piece acts differently and what makes each of those pieces subscribe. Finally, we can say, hey, we can show them the dashboard, and they can start to see, oh, if we start giving this sort of pushing people in this way of our marketing, this persona 7, who really likes to come in on the morning, reads it every single day, it's kind of like a habitual thing, where this other persona tends to come in via social media, you're going to treat them very differently. The social media one, you want to try to first push them to give you your email, find a way to get them to come directly on your site. And then from there, you're going to push up into subscription. For the one that's already using you every morning, it's just that you need to find a way to give them more value by subscribing, bar value, give them a free trial, etc. So they would give two different experiences to both of those different persona bases. And that would cause an incremental increase in subscription. So we did that with a few of our personas. There are certain places where they could even just give it entirely to the AI, let the AI decide what to do at certain decision points. That will be most likely to lead to a subscription. So for subscription-based companies, it tends to be much more complex because they tend to vary widely in their goals and how they reach that goal. But it really comes down to helping them understand why their user subscribes and showing where personalization can fit in to let them get more subscriptions by treating users differently.
Thanks for providing both of those examples. I think just to round out the subscription story that you were telling us, where does the user see the the content or offer that your segment is has been directed to communicate to.
Yeah. So so you're talking about the end user, right?
Absolutely, yeah, the end user.
So the end user, we will take first-party data. So what they're doing on the site. This is also includes anonymous data. So even if they're not signed up, logged in, etc., we can still base it on kind of who they are based on the cookie. We can take that data and take the data of every single user, and it looks very noisy because users act. Even let's say you read the New York Times, like you might read the New York Times for politics, but sometimes you read it for sports. You'll get all this kind of noise because no one's just like perfectly, fits one persona. Every persona has different flavors and tendencies, and even within no persona is homogenous. It's always some difference. What we're able to do is take all of that noisy data and try to round it out and average it out into those personas. Once we have those personas, the end user themselves doesn't necessarily know they're in the persona. But once they come on the site, there's lots of different, vectors we have to communicate to that user. That could be a pop-up, for example, like when does a paywall come up? That could be their email if we have it. What emails do we send them? When did we send them? What kind? It could be what offers do we give them? Maybe we offer someone a free trial or 50% off that we're not offering to everyone because we think they would be we'd be able to be very valuable to them. And we just want them to try it out to see that. So a lot of it and then it could just be the journey itself. So there's a journey to subscribe. And we might find that, hey, if we take this user and push them to this sort of content or show them that we have this sort of content, that's, maybe much long form content, tends to do really well for a certain type of user to make them subscribe. So if we know this user fits in that persona, we will try to recommend long-form content that could be on the homepage, that could be on a similar article link, that could be in the email, etc. But the whole goal is everything has to come together seamlessly to be the user journey. And the user journey is what we optimize to get to that subscription.
I realize you're still in startup mode, and some of the, let's all call it the refined sales approach, is coming together, whether it's white papers or case studies. I'm sure in time, as your product evolves and your clients get more sophisticated with their use, there's going to be some amazing things that you're going to share. Speaking about sharing, if anyone has any questions for Simba, I absolutely encourage you to ask them through the chat, and we'll see them come through and get them up here quickly. One has already come in, so kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, Simba, about the new parts of your product. There's one that was mentioned here called Stream SQL. So if you could just help us understand a little bit about the problem that particular service of Triton solves for clients.
Yeah, so Stream SQL is, when we first started Triton, it was very focused again on the personalization piece. We found with certain clients that they had their own other machine learning models that they were running. And they were often surprised because, at certain points, like we were handling tens of millions of end users. So we'd handle more users than obviously all of our clients combined, or it's all of our clients combined. We would find ourselves iterating on our models a lot faster than some of our clients could, just because, again, we were built from the ground up as a machine learning company. So a lot of them would ask us, hey, how are you pulling that off? How are you iterating on your model so quickly? How are you doing machine learning at this scale, especially at this speed? So we showed them that, hey, we have this whole data backbone to all of our models that lets us iterate very, very quickly. It lets our data scientists focus on the machine learning and less on kind of the plumbing of getting everything working. Once we showed them that, a lot of them just asked, they're like, hey, our data's already in this. Can we just access it directly? And that's when we realized that, hey, there's something here. There's some value we can provide here. So we've since taken that, the kind of data pipeline, data backbone for a machine learning model, and released as a product that we call Stream SQL. So streamsql.io is where you can check it out. But yeah, the whole focus is if you have a machine learning model, the majority of your time is being spent on the data engineering, just getting data to be in the right place, in the right format, et cetera, being able to iterate quickly on that. We've made that simple, so your data scientists can focus on modeling data as opposed to building pipes, essentially.
Thanks for that. No, I look forward to seeing that in action. I know that you've mentioned it to me in the past as well, and when time permits in the next little while, I hope to be able to look a little more closely at it as for some of the purposes that we're thinking about in some business growth. We are getting some more questions, which is great. I think just to make sure we get to everything that I was hoping to get to during our time together today, I wanted to spend a little time thinking about your journey as a company. I do know that you've gone through the SkyDeck at Berkeley. You're part of a cohort, maybe last year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can just talk about your experience there, your kind of journey there. What are the things that you went through as part of the programming curriculum or networking that happened at SkyDeck that perhaps shaped your product, shaped your go-to-market? Just talk us through overall that experience.
Yeah, SkyDeck was awesome. So SkyDeck, for anyone who doesn't know, is the UC Berkeley's accelerator. So they actually accept outside of UC Berkeley, because I didn't go to UC Berkeley myself, and they will accept startups to come and work there for 6 months. They give them $100,000 for some equity, and you get to actually build your startup at Berkeley, and you get access to the whole Berkeley ecosystem. That's just kind of part of it, though. You get to work with 20 other amazing startups. Like myself, I came in, and at that point, you're constantly networking, but from the startup land, even living in San Francisco, it's not like you're always sitting next to 20 other startups all the time. So that experience of having 20 other people, 20 other companies that are kind of in there every single day grinding with you, that have potentially very different. For example, one of the people who sat behind me was an enterprise sales guy for 2 decades. And he was super, super helpful in helping me kind of hone my go-to-market, hone my sales strategy. Beyond that, UC Berkeley in itself gives you a lot of access to, people are always trying to be on the cutting edge. What's new, what's happening. UC Berkeley, has shown to always kind of be on that cutting edge when it comes to technologies. And large companies will come in almost all the time just to come see what's happening at these startups, even if they're not looking to buy anything, just to understand where's the world moving, and being there. So just that ability to talk to executives at some of the biggest Fortune 500s out there coming in just to see what's happening was hugely helpful. The other thing about UC Berkeley was really important in general is just helping us understand what's the actual problem that we solve, and giving us access to mentors who really deeply understand that problem or understand that space, and making all of our iterations about providing value as opposed to just building something. And that's something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs come in with this idea of, hey, I have this great idea, I'm just going to go build it, and people will just come flock to it, which almost never happens in reality. SkyDeck shows you that, hey, you can just focus on the problem, provide value, start with just one person, one client, one business, and build up from there. And that's that learning, just all the ways we've taught me of how to find problem statements, hypothesize, test those hypotheses. To this day, I keep doing it all the time. You're just always iterating, always getting to maximizing the value, right, to your clients.
It's really amazing to hear. Yeah, it's such a positive experience with SkyDeck and going through an accelerator. If you can, sorry, before I get into the next question, just a reminder, anyone who has any questions, please feel free. You can ask them right here in the chat on Zoom. We do have another one, which I'll ask in just a moment. But before I do that, Simba, I think what we'd like to hear a little bit about is your team. So, thinking about your SkyDeck experience, kind of where you started from, where you are today. I'm not so concerned with the size of the team, but if you want to share some of that, please do. But mostly I'm curious in the kind of roles that you have, and maybe if you can shed a little bit of light into who's kind of full-time versus resources that might be contract. I mean, however much you want to share, just to give the audience a picture of, how a small product as a service company is going about building their business.
Yeah. We're a small team, small startup. We're seed stage. When we started SkyDeck, we were actually 3 people. So we started, and at that point, we had our specialties, but everyone kind of did everything. Like I even pulled my one of our less technical founders to write code for a bit, learned HTML on the fly, just because someone asked, there's some edits that need to be made to the website, and we were in a position where we just could kind of make everything hyper specialized. So at first it's very, very scrappy. Everyone kind of does everything. So the titles are essentially meaningless. No one really, you have to have them just because people want to know who they're talking to from other businesses. But internally, you kind of understand that it's kind of a free for all. Like this, everything needs to get done. As we moved forward, one thing that Berkeley gave us, which was awesome, was access to undergrad interns who could come and work with the team. They gave us access to MBAs who had potentially been in the industry for a decade, who'd come and work for us or with us for a certain time frame, just to kind of get a feeling of what startup life is like. Well, we also get to like work with some of the best MBAs in the world. From there, now we've kind of taken our business. There's really three main components that we have. So the team is less than 10 people, so everyone kind of does a little bit of everything, but we really break it down into three distinct chunks. There's the engineering side itself, which is hyper focused on just building features, making sure everything can keep scaling up as we keep bringing in more and more users. We have our developer experience point of view, so people who come in can have the best possible experience with our product, can really understand how to use us to solve our problems. And then finally, there's our marketing and sales side, where it's all about, again, being solution focused, helping people see, hey, there's these problems in industries, here's ways that we can solve them, or just ways that they've been solved before in the past, and providing value in that way.
Just out of curiosity, again, the investment that you've taken, is it, are there specific mandates within the investment around, obviously engineering is a big focal point, but is sales also what's being funded through some of the seed money that you've seen recently?
Yeah, so it's especially in Silicon Valley, things tend to be very founder oriented. So essentially, when people come in, they're coming in because to invest. They come in because they believe in the vision of the product, the team, and honestly, a lot of it is just like their durability. Like, are they willing to put in all the work and time it's going to take to make this a real thing? But the money that comes in itself is kind of there isn't really a like you have to use it to do X, Y, Z. We just needed to build to the next stage. There's benchmarks to hit. Like, and they're always moving. Like, to raise the next round of funding, if you want to go the VC route, you need to have maybe $1 million in annual revenue, and you need to be growing at this rate and X, Y, Z. So there's always these benchmarks, and people understand that for funding you at seed stage, that you have to look like whatever at Series A stage and then on. So you have to be able to kind of see how that growth would look. But in general, it's open-ended. And there's companies that have raised a ton of money with no revenue. There's companies that have a ton of revenue and decide to not raise any money and just bootstrap. So everyone has a different journey to it. And most of the investment money that comes in is usually not predicated on doing anything, especially in the early stages when there's just so many variables. There's so much that changes.
We got a slew of questions in from people you know and don't know, and really looking to expand a little bit about the product that you have and where it's applicable today. So we'll just ask them as they came in. So one of them in particular was thinking about, we obviously know you're dealing with web. I'm very familiar with that, and we'll call it subscriptions as well, which I guess is web, potentially app. Are there any other applications that you're currently see for your product or are looking to see for your product outside of pure just web and app? And I think to answer another question that came in is connected to e-commerce or omni-channel commerce as well. Like, where is that part of where you're offering services, where you see that you're going to offer services? Maybe talk a bit about those, and just to tie that into the other question that came in, feel free to mention the kinds of industries that you're targeting as well as part of answering this question. And if we need to break it down a bit, go ahead. I know I just piled on a lot.
Yeah. So first, in terms of kind of omni-channel, so the way our API works, it's actually as opposed to lots of the verticalized SaaS things where it's email marketing, personalization, it's focused mostly on the data from the emails. Our product is not is general purpose around the data. So the data comes in, it has to be user data, it has to be behavioral, it has to be able to work in that way. But as long as it meets that criteria, in the past, we've had clients that were entirely offline. And we were doing, we had in the very, very, very early days of Triton, we had a company that was actually deciding what items to put into a vending machine. Now, that's out of scope. Nowadays, it was an interesting project, but it did show the kind of generality of the model that we built. But to this day, like we can still handle bringing in, like for example, one of our clients has many websites that they have different data coming in from, and we can actually tie all that data together and use it to build a coherent user profile of the end user, even though it's coming from different places. You can do the same thing from offline data. If you're a sports league and someone buys a jersey from, you're literally like at a game, we could, assuming you were able to tie that to the user and on web or mobile or whatever, we could use that data to make better recommendations. So the recommendations themselves are not, it's an API. So it doesn't only work on a website, it doesn't only work on a specific part of the website. It's very general purpose and how it can be used. Obviously on the Stream SQL side, the data engineering side, that is the same thing. It's entirely focused on bringing in streaming data from users. But it does not matter what kind of data or where that data comes from. It actually doesn't know. It just knows how to bring in different signals to understand who the user is and what their intent is and what is a good thing to show them in this context.
So if we're kind of digesting what you just said, it sounds like you're not too concerned with whether it's web or app or e-commerce. You're building a personalization platform, as a service via API, as we're hearing, and I'm assuming that a lot of documentation to follow in terms of how customers may use this is potentially part of your journey in the next little while.
Yeah.
We had another question come in, just trying to get inside of the Triton experience, and we know that you already mentioned it here about the vending machine example. Not everything you've done exactly was a means to an end. It might have been something you did in the moment. Are there any failures, near misses, very small regrets that you'd like to share? And then tell us a little bit about kind of what you did, whether you integrated that as a learning into the product, or whether you broke away from that feature, didn't make it part of your future roadmap. Just if you have some examples that are juicy enough to entertain us for a bit here.
Yeah. So Triton in itself has taken so many turns over the years. When it first started, it was nothing as it was now. We were, again, just like a couple of engineers who had this idea, and we kind of fell into the trap of, if you'll build it, they'll come. So we spent a lot of time building something, and then we released it, and then didn't get any signups, and we're very confused as to why they didn't happen, because that's not what the TechCrunch articles say. And so going to like very specific or slightly more specific things, like at first we just knew that we could build, we knew a lot about personalization, I spent time researching it. So at first we were just trying to figure out where to apply that. At one point we even went as far as to like go and see if it would apply into supply chain, and like spent all this time meeting with some of the awesome people who work at the big retailers, found that there's no value there for them. One thing that I think we've always been good at, which is why I guess I don't think about it as much as failure, is that all we're doing is treating it like a constant iteration cycle. We're constantly trying to find a problem, hone in on what the solution is and what the vision, the messaging is. There are times in our, for example, the subscription side, when we used to go to subscription companies, we pitch them the same way we would pitch a company that made its money off of ads and clicks, or that's what they saw as value. And it just didn't work at all. Even though we knew that our product, if applied in the right ways, would be able to drive subscriptions, by not saying it the right way or not explaining it in a way that made it seem like a solution, just more like a feature, we had zero traction subscriptions. And it wasn't until we sat down, I was going to New York a lot, and it wasn't until I sat down with some of the potential clients there that it started to click that, oh, there is something here. It's just that I'm too focused on the solution and like showing them, hey, like, look at what I have, rather than making sure I was listening and understanding what's the actual problem they have, and how did they talk about, what's the words they use, how do they think about it, and then kind of tailoring what we do, if it was a good fit. Sometimes it wasn't. If it was a good fit, into how it'd be helpful to them. We've had all kinds of other, crazy, there's like very like crazy stuff happening of like, oh, like last minute, I'm gonna like take a flight to New York or to LA because there's a client that's like about to close, or, oh, like we had times where, especially selling to publishing, where we'd be almost at the end of a big deal, and then, like a CEO would leave of the whole entire company, of like thousands of person company, and the whole thing stopped. And all of a sudden, again, reorg, because media in general, as I imagine you all know, is changing so rapidly right now. So there's a lot of funny stories of just like unbelievable timing of like, oh, like I thought that was done, but just like everything changed underneath. And I mean, we're facing that. A lot of businesses are facing that right now with everything that's happening around the world with the coronavirus, where things are going, and all of a sudden the whole game changes underneath your feet. So yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. I know, and we'll talk a bit about what's going on in the now in a few minutes. Just remind everyone, if you do have any questions, or please ask them in the chat. We have a bit of time left to answer those. We do have another question that came in, really more speaking to your business model, more focused on the API product that you were mentioning earlier. Maybe if you could just talk about how you're selling it today, how you may sell in the future, if those plans are something that are confidential, just to give the audience a little bit of an idea of how they might get their hands on your platform as a service.
Yeah, so we charge on monthly active users. Usually we've like done, especially some certain bigger clients will sometimes vary off it, but the easiest way for us, the easiest thing to measure is monthly active user, because usually what we'll do is we'll come in and do some sort of pilot to show how much incremental value we create per user. And then, based on that, we'll also give you like kind of a price on that. So anyway, we charge per MAU. So as you grow, we're charging on that front. It gets you the more users you get. So it's not just kind of like it's not just a full on linear thing. But yeah, so we charge on MAU. Definitely reach out to me at simba@streamsql.io if you have a very specific example, like, hey, like if we had X number of users and we're this kind of business, I can give you a better idea of the ballpark number. But I guess the short answer is it depends. But we try to do MAU based.
As we've seen recently from Zoom, their MAU has kind of gone up by about 20 times from what it was in January compared to March. So it's amazing. It's amazing how quickly you have the need to scale, thanks to Zoom. So thanks for your questions, folks. I mean, we have a couple more that we had ready to talk to Simba about. And I think just, listen, we're doing this product AMA because generally our routines are really thrown off. Pretty much all of us are social distancing, if not generally, stuck at home. I know we have a friend of ours here on the Zoom today who is generally locked in a part of Paris. We hope he's well and that he got his exercise in today. But thinking about your business, because really today is about you. I do know that state of California has implemented some fairly aggressive measures to limit the spread of COVID-19. As it relates to you, I can tell you, because I've spoken to you via chat before, video chat. You have a different backdrop than I'm used to seeing. I'm used to seeing windows, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So if you can just maybe tell us a little bit about how your team is coping with what's going on. I'm not going to get you to project the future. Just talk about the here and now, and how it's just affecting your business. Obviously, you're not jumping on a plane anywhere for the foreseeable future, but how is the business handling this just change to the day-to-day, and how is your team handling it? Maybe talk about more the softer side of your business after sharing over the last 45 minutes, the product detail, product management scope of what you're up to.
Yeah. So one way I think, so there's two parts. So first I'll talk a little bit about just how the change ecosystem just changes how we think about not necessarily our product, but even just like where we fit in. I think nowadays most people that we talk to are in a rare position where they have more time than money, is how I describe it, which is super rare and actually a really good thing for a startup like ours, because we can use it as a time to educate and to help people. People are just looking out, like they have time for once, like pop their head out of the water and see, cool, like what's new, what's out there, what's changed since I've last had the time to be able to research the whole ecosystem. And so our goal right now is more about education. It's not about pushing heavy sales, pushing growth at a certain point. It's more, and obviously you have ABC always be closing, but there's a focus on making sure that we can talk to these people who've been too busy to be able to talk to us in the past, and just show them how we think about personalization, how the world has changed. So there's that piece. So that's how we think about it. So, try to think of the positive parts of what's changed and lean on that in terms of just this business side. On soft side, it's been interesting because I myself, we had a few, especially our engineers, a lot of them are used to working remotely, and they've been quite productive at it. I've learned it myself, and I know a couple of our other team members, like I never used to be able to work from home. It was like one of the hardest things for me to do because it's just hard for me to really get in the zone. There's just so many things that could happen, so much distraction, so many like, oh, I'm just gonna go cook lunch real quick or do whatever. And it's hard to just really get in your zone. And so one thing that I know I did it, and I know a few other team members did it, is we took over parts of the house. Like one of my engineers, he built this cool little setup in the garage, where in the corner of a garage he has 2 plywood things he's put together, and built a cubicle office in his garage. And I think part of it is it's forcing everyone to learn how they can be productive remotely. And it's actually been really crazy how after you get over the first hump, it's almost better. It becomes, you start to realize remote working. There's big companies that are all remote, especially in Silicon Valley funded companies. And I never really got it myself. And now I'm finally starting to understand how when you're in a position where you can talk asynchronously, you're always writing things down, etc. It actually, once you get used to it, lets you move a lot faster, because there's much less synchronous communication costs because everything's asynchronous by default. And that lets you move really quickly and work back. But the thing that you have to work on, though, is maintaining that kind of group cohesiveness, making sure that, especially now when it's not even you're remote and locked in your house, to just make sure that we've had a company happy hours where we just all jump on Zoom after work and just not talk at all about work and just hang out and have a beer, stuff like that. You just kind of get really creative in maintaining cohesiveness and just kind of fighting the boredom, and just everyone's kind of in it together. There's a level of that, and we're in this crazy surreal experience, and we're all kind of going through it together and just trying to make do and stay sane.
Simba, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mark, for hosting these.
Follow Product AMA on Twitter and send us your topic suggestions. We look forward to seeing you soon.